if you like. Um, and
Well, I
yeah,
don't
we
know
have like 20 minutes.
power. I don't, the power I have is the power to listen to what people tell me to do. That's about it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I definitely am in the. Sorry, let me figure out how to turn on my camera here.
That's fine.
Uh, Dude, if I could get stuff done today, I would be dangerous. Okay. Yeah. So, um, I definitely so my role, just to give a little bit more background on what I do, is I work at the state legislature. I am the Veterans Caucus coordinator. So my job is to support the caucus and all of its members in moving forward veteran specific legislation. And so if it doesn't have anything to do with veterans, then I don't really pay attention to it. If it does have something to do with veterans, even then I can't really pay attention to it unless the caucus says, RJ, we want you to pay attention to this. And then they get to decide how I pay attention to that. Is it something that I'm just kind of watching and keeping an eye on and reporting on? Is it something that they would like me to create a flyer and notify individuals that we're accepting testimony for? Is it something that they would like us to, I mean, I would say oppose, but we really haven't opposed anything that's veteran specific um, within the legislature, at least not in the last, couple of years that I've been there. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's really just being at the service of the 13 legislators who are veterans and non-veterans, but military supporters who are part of that caucus. Um, and so yeah, I don't know where you wanted me to go from there.
No, I think that's really helpful. I wasn't sure if Laura and Tim had been aware, and Tim is in California, but I also wanted to it, I have a buddy who works for the party in Nevada, the Democratic Party in Nevada. And if Oregon, I pitched this to members saying, I want Oregon to be the first state to create a comprehensive military civil rights act. And it would be, whether that's the Bill of Rights or some form of it or something else. Nobody's done this yet. It's always been kind of afterthoughts. Like in California, they have a section under their civil rights department uh, uh, law that military and veteran status is a protected class. It was added in 2013, but when it was passed, somehow military and veteran status didn't even get added to the complaint intake form. So what the West Coast does has potential for other states doing it, and I would be happy to have something to share with other states and be like, here, put it, you do it, right? Have MIA chapters in other states, and we learn from them or from each other and see the dominoes fall. But that's also my interest. I want to be kind of clear eyed about. I'm in Oregon. Oregon's a great place for this to be happening, but I want to also make sure that the loopholes are closed. Wyden's team has been really supportive. They're kind of in that weird lame duck area, not because Wyden's going out, but because committees aren't assigned yet. So, yeah. Tim and Laura, was there anything that you wanted to point out or talk about or question or put into the universe?
Am I unmuted? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out my phone too. Okay, put this heater on. Um, I was just going to say that from the work perspective, I joined the Veterans Surge Group for employees here through Samaritan Health Systems, and they meet twice a month, I think. They canceled their first meeting. So I'm hoping, I guess we're in October now anyway, to be able to share something from what they're doing. They work under the diversity, equity, inclusion branch of the health services. And then I wanted to say also that after we attended the House meeting that primarily focused on veteran suicide, the next day I attended a veteran suicide grand rounds through my work. And a woman named Ashley, I can't remember her last name, who worked for the VA federally, gave a very similar report to the plea that those two vets had asked for from the House Committee for the military cultural competency training, the veteran suicide assessment training, and the lethal weapon something training. They addressed those three things as well, and were training medical people who were on the grand rounds for that. I had asked about, well, they didn't talk about military cultural competency. So I had asked our veteran service person, Kyle Hatch, through the system, if we are doing that as a health system. And he said that is in the works. So I'm hoping to have some more to report, I guess, from this setting. But one thing that we did that Logan had referred to was we have a retired military chaplain who our system wasn't acknowledging his credentials in the same way, like we're coming at it from a civilian lens. And so we were asking him to be credentialed again in a civilian organization. And then we worked with him and HR to bypass that and just acknowledge the training he received in his military experience to become a chaplain. So that was, I feel like we call ourselves a veteran friendly workplace, and that was a very appropriate thing, I think, to do, and not make him have to go through something after he's retired and has way more credentials than we do as civilian chaplains. So, and could pass a fit test. And I don't think my boss or I could do that these days. So that's just the report from Samaritan stuff. I'm working with Crystal, another vet here, who's a case manager, about she came to the Ledge Day with us, and she's, I think, part of the veteran surge group as well. So, yeah, sorry, Logan, I was in and out of that. I had 3 people come in my office during this meeting, so I missed most of what you said and shared, but, so if you already talked to Ledge Days, I apologize, but.
Well, I just want
to,
thank you for doing that and advocating for that, because that is a real issue. I know that when I got out in 2000, I got back from Iraq in 2010, and I was a wheeled vehicle mechanic. Our mission was convoy security, so I was in cars all day and night. And I got back and I couldn't get a job at a mechanic shop. There was no shop that would accept my credentials, and I could break down a vehicle and put it back together with a blindfold on. It was really ridiculous, and so it was. I guess I don't know. I felt kind of comforted that when I heard that the colleges were starting to accept military credits now, if you had some sort of military experience. But now all of my military experience is taking up the slots of my electives. And so now, like, I don't even get to choose electives. I have to do all my cores, and I don't get to pick anything else because that's where my military experience goes. So I think that there's still some work to make sure that those skills are transferable from the military to the civilian side. And that's something that we do, that we need people to advocate for, because once we bring awareness to that is when the legislature starts listening and seeing what they can do about it.
I feel like all of y'all probably have lots of stories like that, and I'm sorry that happened. I remember distinctly when Logan was entering into graduate school, they wouldn't accept his vaccination record from the VA, and they made him do a blood titer to see if he had him. And like now, and as a civilian, I mean, I'm obviously still a civilian, but I'm more aware being married to Logan. But now I understand that, like, you all get all the vaccines more than the average person. And so it just baffled me in hindsight that they would not have even accepted his vaccination record, because it wasn't from a medical group. It was from the VA, or maybe it was DOD. I don't know who gives it, but it's, yeah, there's a lot of, I love the terminology they used at that presentation, military cultural competency. And that is its own distinct, I mean, I feel like I'm in the basics of that, and I'm married to someone who, anyway, so your average person doesn't know that stuff. So Tim, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, well, I was a medic. And while I was stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland, I took the Maryland State EMT class, the Army paid for it. I got out, I came back home here to Sacramento, California, and they're like, that's nice, start over. Means nothing. The experience when I went to get jobs didn't matter. I was treated the same as someone who just graduated from EMT school. So yeah, it was weird. On the California side of things, we killed for the 8th session, I believe they said it was. A bill died. So California is the only state that taxes military retirement. And we cannot pass a bill. They estimated there's 150,000 military retirees in the state of California. They can't pass a bill to not state tax their military retirement. And we're the only state that does it. And it died this year because we had a budget windfall. Now that exact amount is our budget deficit. So anything that had appropriations tied to it it died in committee. We do have 2 bills currently. One is a political run. It's called Veteran Memorials. We have a fight going in Orange County. They had a group down there through the American Legion and the Association of the United States Army to put he had a farmer who has donated his land. His children aren't going to carry on. Will donate it to the California Department of Veteran Affairs to put a state veteran cemetery. The city of Anaheim and another group, they want to put one there. So they are fighting over how the state's going to fund this. I'm not kidding. So they got a bill that was introduced. It's AB 2838. It's still in committee, that is going to force the state to pick the more politically powerful group from the city of Anaheim. The second one is veteran suicide, and this is a pilot program. One will be in Los Angeles County. You've all heard of LA. The other one will be up here just northeast of us in rural Nevada County. That's why they're doing those 2 counties, and it's going to be a program on veteran suicide prevention, and that one has moved to the assembly, from committee to the assembly. And that's Senate Bill 783. So it's gone through the Senate. Now it's making its run through the assembly. That in our system, you introduce one in one body, it passes it, it goes to the other body, and they've got to pass it. And then if they change the language, then they do that reconciliation committee thing. So that's kind of what we've got going on here. It is very it's very difficult. There's a lot of lip service. We have a legislative day that is sponsored by the California Department of Veteran Affairs, and we have we all go down, we dress up. They host us for the morning. Their conference room at the Department of Veteran Affairs. They'll have some folks that come in and speak to us, politicians. They give an award to a couple, one from the Assembly and one from the Senate for those elected officials that they felt did the most for veterans. And then we get turned loose in the afternoon after lunch. We actually go over to the offices and we split them up based on where we're either from or what needs to be covered, and go in and talk to folks. But it's very difficult. It really is. I had an incident, I'll tell you, we're talking about backlash on veterans and things. I was in Lowe's yesterday morning going through the self-checkout. I had grabbed something real quick. The guy came yelling at the Lowe's clerk, "You've got parking for veterans, you've got parking for disabled people," and all this stuff. I can't get it. It's like, but that mentality is still out there, and there are people who do not, the disdain for veterans because of so I joined 9 years after Vietnam. We were still in the shadow of Vietnam. You did not wear a uniform. You did not want to be known, because it was still very much, I was called a baby killer down here at Sac State when I went to visit my old roommate. Because I was in uniform coming back for Christmas. It started to change in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then of course post 9/11 it just blew up. Now we have everybody's fallen over themselves to do stuff for us, give us discounts, all these kinds of things. And now there's starting to be a backlash, in my opinion, and what I'm seeing, there's kind of this backlash that now, oh, well, what's so special about you guys? And this is driven politically by what's been going on in the political climate of the country, and how people see things that way. So, here we are. So it's very difficult right now, and we're starting to, I feel we're kind of swinging the pendulum back the other way again, like it was after Vietnam. And I grew up watching that war, and that famous picture of the colonel that was released from the Hanoi Hilton and his daughter running down, that was right down the street here at Travis Air Force Base. We watched that live. Incredible images. It was horrible. My dad was a World War II veteran, and you didn't. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, and that's what's going on down here.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about, because you were talking about like the dynamics there in California, and well, here in Oregon, when they did some surveys recently, I want to say it was like in 2014, 2013, somewhere around there. They found that Oregon had one of the highest rates of suicide amongst veterans in the nation. We had one of the highest rates of homelessness amongst veterans in the nation. We had a high percentage of veterans who were incarcerated. And we had a high percentage, I think we still have a high percentage of veterans who are on subsidies like food stamps than the average across the nation. So like that says that we don't take care of our veterans here in Oregon. When it comes to taxing of like disability pay, I don't know about pensions, but I believe that disability pay is still taxed as well. And so we don't have a lot of veterans that come to Oregon to retire because of that. They'll go to Washington because Washington is a little friendlier. And then they'll have, if they have family in Oregon, then they'll just visit from Washington. Washington also has the Air Force Base and the Joint Base. And so they'll go up there to go seek services because Oregon doesn't have a base like that. So I hear you when you say that, there's this push to kind of get veterans the support that they need within the last, recent years. But we haven't seen that in Oregon. And so that's what we're trying to push for now, is to try to get that a piece of that momentum so that we can provide services that give veterans a good quality of life here.
Well, it's a weird dynamic here in California. Okay. This is liberal California, right? But at the same time, we have the largest Department of Veteran Affairs at the state level. Number 2 is Texas. And I forget the number that they quoted to us. But it's substantially, they're number 2, but they're much lower. Our state Department of Veteran Affairs does a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that the state does for veterans, aside from what you can get through the federal VA system. At the same time, we tax military retirement, and I can't own a home, don't get enough money. There's all these things that come up, and they try to pass legislation and do things, and it's getting weird. So it is, but it's very two-faced in some aspect. We do have when I got out in 1987, we had California here in the Sacramento, we call the Central Valley. So that's from Redding down to Bakersfield. That's the Central Valley. You have Sacramento in the north, San Joaquin in the south. The Central Valley had the highest number of military retirees and veterans in the country outside of the Baltimore-Washington corridor. The Baltimore-Washington corridor, obviously, that's the political side. Here, you live in Sacramento, I can drive an hour and a half and go skiing. I can drive an hour and a half and be at the ocean. And everything in between. That was why people retired here. In Sacramento, we had 2 Air Force bases. We had an Army supply depot. We still have up in Oroville, not Oroville, outside of Marysville, is Beale Air Force Base. Down in Solano County next to us, we still have Travis. But a lot of the military left Sacramento. We had a lot of bases that were closed. March Air Force Base is now March Air Reserve Base, all those kinds of things. So it's weird. There's no, it is, it's just which way's it literally is, which way's the wind blowing today? And it's very odd, but it's something, and this is why I like what Logan's doing is we need to have some voices, and it needs to, still be up in front that there's a lot of things that are still happening and it's not being dealt with appropriately. And we need to have these conversations, and we need to look at how do we do this better? How do we treat each other better? I think that's the big thing for me. And it is very difficult, even within the veteran community. And I served from 1984 to 1987. Nothing went on. Nothing. Well, okay, Reagan in '86 shot a couple of cruise missiles into Libya to shut Gaddafi up. That was it. When I got out, I was not considered a veteran. The VA wouldn't talk to me. I didn't get hurt when I was in. If you got injured and they put you, it was called TDRL, Temporary Disability Retirement List, then the VA would see you. Otherwise, it wasn't until last 8 years, 10 years, that people like myself could go in. I'm 100% for PTSD for an incident that happened when I was in, but it wasn't combat. But it was the largest loss of life outside of combat in the history of the military. December 12th, 1985, plane crash coming back from Egypt, the 101st Airborne. So yeah, but we need to do this. We need to be helping each other, taking care of each other. We need to be treating each other more civilly. And we need to look at, how there is still an undercurrent out there. People that, now we're the angry veterans. I had this discussion with Logan. That's one of the things that shuts us down a lot with politicians, especially is, we're going to go ballistic on the angry veteran. We're start yelling at them. Most of us don't do that. Yes, there are some that do, but you get that mentality that, we're going to go off and start killing people and shooting because of our PTSD from the war. And that, you see and we don't do that. But that perception clouds what we're trying to accomplish. And it gives people an avenue to shut us down because they're going to be afraid of us because we're going to do these things. So anyway.
Yeah, the Rambo was written by a Canadian civilian. And that's where a lot of it, in my mind, as a millennial, kind of comes from. Like John Rambo in the novel is like really upset that they didn't win, and he shoots up a bunch of people. We're at 5:00. I did want to register something to think about is, and RJ, I think you might have a better sense of this. Bill of Rights, or as it's currently constructed, and you gave me some other examples as well. The language that I copied and pasted seems to establish kind of or maybe it's like a baseline that then is at least statutorily substantive for other agencies to then kind of be bound by. Even though the language is kind of soft, it speaks in kind of abstracts. And one thing to think of as we move closer to the Ledge Council sending it back and session opening up is that the best avenue for right now? It seems like a start. Like it's easier for me to conceptualize federal because we have some laws that you just have to. I have like a little handout. These are the amendments you should make to VEVRA. These are the amendments you should make to HCPA. A Bill of Rights, and I could probably do some more research on the incarcerated parent or the child of incarcerated parents Bill of Rights, which is what I copied. I'm curious, like how that has been fleshed out concretely, and whether that then led to more specific legislation. Like the Bill of Rights does not say if an employer discriminates against you, you have this a private right of action to sue them or like whatever. Do you have a sense, or is this a later conversation as to whether the format that we're working with right now for the act, is that a good starting point? Could we go for more? Are we going for too much? Because I think you have a better, I'm assuming you have a better sense of it than someone who's just been here a year.
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely opportunity to improve. As the bill moves through the legislature, legislators will have an opportunity to approve stuff. And like they might not agree with one of the, stipulations within the proposed legislation. And so they might say, well, I want to introduce an amendment that strikes this and puts this in its place. And so you have an opportunity as well as a voter, as a citizen, to be able to go to legislators, go to your representative and say, hey, I need you to advocate for me. And if this does happen, so that we can keep this piece of the legislation in place, and it's vital because X, Y, and Z. And then it's up to your representative or other representatives to be able to advocate for that on the floor before the vote happens. So yeah, I think it's a great starting point. It will, I mean, most likely, I shouldn't say it will, but it will. There will be an opportunity for amendments to happen, and so you could potentially make changes and adjustments as it moves through the legislature.
Anybody else? Last minute questions, comments? Tim, Laura, you good?
No, I'm good.
Sorry, I gotta go.
Okay, no, that's time.
Take care.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'll get this on YouTube. I'll separate the discussion from the presentation, and I'll send out the links later. And if you want editing permission, just let me know. I'm happy to change it. 4 people isn't that much, but I want to keep it kind of controlled. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Take care.